Hey there viewers, got an 03 F150 here. It's a four-wheel drive with a 4.6. The guy brought it in and said it's out of transmission fluid. Parks it inside his garage and said there was no leaks on the floor, so I thought that was kind of odd. Put 3 quarts of transmission fluid in it to get it here. So I brought it in, picked up in here. A small leak on the dipstick tube, nothing major. No visible leaks underneath, so I took and pulled the check plug out of the transfer case, and lo and behold, that's where the extra 3 quarts is. So there's a seal that goes between the transfer case and the transmission. I suspect that when they leak, they'll exchange fluids and transfer it until they achieve a normal level. So we're going to pull the transfer case out of this and have a look there, see what that looks like, and change that seal and put it back together, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so we're going to get started. Got the truck jacked up. You can use whatever means you have there. You're going to want to jack it up so all 4 wheels are hanging. Put your jack stands underneath it or whatever you have there, but don't put them under the front control arms, because on this vehicle we've got to remove the bracket that houses the torsion bars for the front. So if you're jacked under the control arms, that's not going to work, because it'll let the whole front of the vehicle down. So make sure you've got it supported good on the frame. You leave it in neutral. And that'll get it started. So the first thing we're going to do is go under. We're going to unhook the drive shafts. You're going to need a 12mm 12-point socket for that. I've already gone through and kind of sprayed some stuff down here a while ago. This thing's pretty rusty, so we're probably going to have to do some heating and some rattling to get things tore apart. So I guess I would encourage you, if you've never done this before and you're thinking about doing it yourself, watch the whole video. It is a little bit of a process. It's not, I guess I wouldn't consider it extremely difficult, but it may be like a lack of tools or something like that could hinder you from doing this. But anyhow, hope this goes well. Alright, well, before we get too far, we're going to take and pull the drain plug out of this transfer case. Just use a regular 3/8 ratchet. Make sure you got a drain pan ready. It's going to go all over the place. It's going to hit this cross member. I'm going to grab a little piece of cardboard to stuff in here to deflect that. Alright, well, I've got our forma funnel stuffed in there. So there's going to be a lot of fluid in here, because everything extra that was in the tranny is now in the transfer case, so expect a lot. So we'll let that drain out there for a while. Like I say, after that we're going to take and pull the drive shafts out of this. Start with the rear drive shaft, and we're going to yank out the front drive shaft and go from there. Alright, I'm going to pull out the rear drive shaft. It's been my experience on these that these bolts will not move. They're usually Loctite in, so we're going to give them a little bit of heat. Use a 12mm 12-point. Give it a little heat there, and it should come right out. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot of heat. They're usually just held in with a little bit of medium strength Loctite. So you just need to heat them up enough to break that loose. And I guess it would be fair to mention that leave the vehicle in neutral so you can roll the drive shafts around. We're going to go ahead and do the fronts now. These ones are coming out okay without heating, so. Next ones on the front drive shaft are a little trickier to get to. They're up in there on the transfer case, and you can see the U-joint has a shield around it. So if you come underneath there and look, you see the exhaust pipe kind of blocks that all off. So the easiest way to do that is come up in front of the cross member, reach up in there with a long extension, and go ahead and break them loose that way. I would say if you're not using an impact, probably break those loose first, so you can hold the drive shaft out here on the front axle and then get those busted loose. Alright, I tried busting those loose. They won't go, so we're going to throw a little heat on there. Got quite an extension on there. It really reduces the torque. take a whole lot of heat, so you know, just kind of be cautious when you're doing that. You don't have to turn it red hot, just got to break the Loctite loose. Let's go ahead and slip the shaft right out. We're going to go ahead and pull the rear shaft out too. I have a bucket underneath the transfer case there. When you pull that shaft out, quite often there'll be a little bit of fluid in that extension housing. Want to drip on the floor. Not too bad in this case. Alright, the next part of the job here is where it gets pretty tricky. We've got to loosen up these torsion bars. This is a torsional spring that essentially is your entire front suspension. It's what holds up the whole front of the control arms, or the whole front of the vehicle on the lower control arm. These are under a lot of tension. If you're not familiar with these, or you don't feel comfortable, I'd suggest don't messing with them. They can be pretty tricky, pretty difficult to remove out of the control arm, especially if it has a lot of rust on it. So if you decide you're gonna go for it, we've got to take a measurement. You're going to see the bolt that goes into the bottom of the torsion bar bracket. And that's what adjusts the amount of spring tension on the front of the vehicle. We need to get a critical measurement of that. We're going to use just a pair of calipers, and we're going to measure from the head of the bolt to the top of the bracket and get an accurate reading. That way when we put it back together, we have an idea of where to reset it so the vehicle's not sitting cockeyed and the front wheel alignment's not blowing right off the charts. So that's the bolt I was talking about. Here's where you're going to want to measure it. The distance from, let me see if I can get something to point with here. From the top of this bracket to the head of the bolt. You can either measure, inside to inside, or inside of this bracket, the outside of the head bolt, or head of that bolt, whatever you want to do. You can stick your calipers up in there. Get a good, accurate measurement. It's kind of difficult to show on the camera, but you can stick your calipers up in there essentially, and like I say, get a good accurate measurement. However you're going to do that, because you want to be able to put that bolt back exactly where it was. And I still would encourage you to do a wheel alignment or have the wheel alignment checked after you do this. Make sure the ride height's correct, but this will get you back really, really close. All right, I got my measurements. Just for the heck of it, I took and I wrote them down right on the back of the controller, or on the back of this cross member with a paint marker. That way I don't have to remember them, and I don't lose the piece of paper they're written on. So I'm going to grab an 18 millimeter. I'm going to start backing these bolts out. Now, like I said, make sure you don't have your jack stands under the front control arms, because if you do, when you start loosening these, the truck's going to come down, you could fall off the jack stands and crush it. We're just heating up the bracket that the bolt goes through. You'll see it when you're under there. Alright, next thing we want to do, we got the torsion bar bolts out. We got 6 bolts holding the cross member in. 18 millimeter there. You got 2 with a 15 millimeter head. You're going to take 18 millimeter wrench. And we got our 18s on the impact. We're going to go ahead and zip these out. That's what that bolt looks like. If that's not coming out easy, be careful, because the threads aren't very big on it, and you could easily break that off. Kind of a specialty bolt. Alright, we're going to switch over to the 15 socket. 18 wrench. Go ahead and buzz these out. A lot of rust on this baby. Alright, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Alright, now that you got the control arm loose, this is the nut, or the bracket under here that the bolt for the torsion bars went through. Just stick a pipe wrench on the torsion bar. We're going to rotate it slightly, and then we're going to pull that out. It just has a little bit of tension on it. So I'm going to have somebody help me do that. Rotate it. It's going to be a little snug. Come loose, really. Put a little more pressure on it. There you go. Should be loose now. There it is. All right, once you get that out, just go ahead and back the tension off it. So you find that this piece actually sits in there a little loose, but it has these grooves on it. So you just got to take a little bit of tension off it to get it out of the way. All right, so this next part can be pretty tricky. Now that you've got that nut out of there, or that, you know, the little bracket that the bolt went through for the torsion bar, they do make a special tool that actually jacks up on that torsion bar key, so you can take that out. I find just sticking a pipe wrench, you know, on the torsion bar. You don't have to rotate it a lot, just enough to take just a tiny bit of tension off it. So, but you can see, I mean, the pipe wrench slips, so that can be dangerous. You know, so be careful there. Next thing we gotta do is we gotta get the torsion bar either out of the front control arms, or you gotta take it out of those, I call them the torsion bar keys. It's the piece that when you put the bolt in the rear, it's the piece that the bolt jacks against and actually rotates the torsion bar. I'm going to elect to take it out of those. The torsion bars here, trying to get them out of a control arm can be pretty tricky. So back there, I'm going to take it apart and then I'm going to show you. But essentially, there's like a, I don't really know how to explain it. Maybe like an eggplant shaped piece. You know, it's a little bit fatter where it goes onto the torsion bar. The torsion bar is hexed like a stop sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat up that key a little bit. I'm going to go in from the back side of the control arm with an air hammer and a longer chisel bit. And we're going to rattle that off there. This could be a tricky spot for you to do at home, particularly if you live where, you know, your truck's going to be all rusty. So before you get this far, you're going to want to take a look at that to make sure that you have means to, you know, get a bar in there. You know, be able to really, I mean, you're gonna have to beat on these things quite a bit usually to get these off. Before we take it off all the way, I'm just gonna make a reference mark on the torsion, from the torsion bar to the torsion bar key itself with a paint marker. I'm gonna label them left to right. That way nothing gets mixed up. We'll put it on exactly how we took it off, and we don't have any questions there. I'm gonna give you a little closer look at what that looks like, what we were just talking about. So here's our torsion bar key, I guess you would call it. Might have a technical name, that's what I've always called them. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to heat this up a little bit through this area. We're going to come in from the front side with the air hammer. You can use you know, a long punch or whatever you have to get through this cross member. After we heat it up, we're going to take and essentially drive this whole mess towards the back, and then go on the other side and do the same thing. So, but before they come off all the way, I'm just going to take a paint marker, mark it in relationship to the torsion bar. It should be pretty difficult to mix it up, but it's easier just to mark it and be on the safe side. Things usually come off really hard. Usually really rusted, so we put a fair amount of heat on it here. You don't have to turn it blood red. You know, obviously we're just using a little brazing tip, so we just want to try to break that bond of the rust. That's what we're attempting to do. This may or may not work. Sometimes it takes a few attempts. Pretty fair amount of rattle and beating usually. Started to move, that's great. Like I said, before I get too far, I'm going to take and put a reference mark on here. Like I said, I think it's pretty difficult to mix these up, but it only takes a second to make a mark, so we'll do that. And again, I want to label them left and right side, because you don't want to mix them up left to right. That would be sitting there fumbling around wondering which one's which, so we'll put an R on the bottom of this one. Right side. All right, gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Get that heated up, rattle that back, and then we're gonna get right to where they're ready to pop right off there and just knock them both off. And keys will hit the floor, and that'll be that. So you kind of get the point on that. That's one of the more difficult parts of this whole job, actually. All right, well, the hardest part's over. There's those torsion bar keys I was telling you about. That's what they look like. You also see there the nuts there that I labeled, or the brackets that the bolts went through rather. Label those left to right also. Don't, I should have mentioned that earlier, don't mix those up, because if you've taken your measurements from those, you're going to want to be able to put those back where they belong. So this is what your parts pile should look like. Should have around about that many bolts, a couple drive shafts, and then we're going to go on from here. Alright, one thing that you may have discovered already, it won't come out. No matter if you turn it sideways. That really doesn't matter. We just needed to gain some distance from the front of our cross member here, our torsion bar bracket, to the transfer case, just so we have enough. The only reason we had to move this is to get the transfer case out. So we just slide it back, just leave it there. It's not going to be in our way. I mean, if you're really anxious to get it out, just take and, you know, cut the rivets off of this cross member, you know, that way you got enough room to turn it sideways, or do whatever you got to do. You can either unhook the exhaust or something, but really it's kind of redundant. We'll just leave it where it is. It's plenty enough room to do what we have to do. Next thing we're going to do, being that the hard part's over, we're going to take and start unhooking some stuff on our transfer case, unbolt that, and slip that out of there and have a look at that seal. See what the heck's happening here, why this thing's transferring fluid like it is. Okay, next we're going to want to unhook the transfer case shift motor. Next, come around to the front of the transfer case near where the front drive shaft hooks on and remove this vent hose. You'll see it goes on a barbed nipple up there. So just go ahead and unhook that and set that out of the way. After that, we're going to take and start unbolting the transfer case. You'll see on the extension housing of the transmission here, there's going to be the bolts sticking through from the transmission into the transfer case. You'll see we have one here, got one here that I removed, and they continue on and go around. There's probably, well, I didn't look, there's probably 6 or 7 of those, or 8 maybe, that hold that on. You're going to have to reach up and around the top to gain access to those. You're going to want probably a variety of wrenches, some stubbies, some ratcheting wrenches, some long ones to break them loose. Got a couple out over here, got 3 out already. You can see these bolts have some Loctite on them from the factory, so they did come out hard all the way to the end. So like I say, these little stubby ratchet wrenches kind of help accomplish that task there. Alright, I've gone ahead and took all the bolts out of it. There is 6 total, is what you're going to find. Now when you get them out, before you pull your last one out, take over here on the passenger side, just grab one of the bolts you have, thread it in 6 or 7 threads by hand, because what'll happen, you know, a couple things can happen. You can get all the bolts out, taking that last one out, transfer case could come loose, slide back, or it could slide back enough to come around and swing down and catch you upside the head. So just go ahead and do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a bar. My intention is come up here with a bar and just kind of give this a wiggle here, just kind of pry out on it a little bit. Get the transfer case busted loose off the extension housing on the transmission, and we should be able to slide that back and take that out by hand, hopefully. At least if it falls on me, I'll have a witness here. Bolt back loose that we put in there. Again. Alright. Oops. Make a note, have a bucket underneath it. Taking plugs there. Pull it back. Alright. Well, that wasn't too bad. We got it out of there. We're going to go ahead and have a look at it. mess here and see what we see. So, all right, there's what the back half of the transmission extension housing should look like once you get the transfer case removed. All right, we got the transfer case sitting over here on the bench now. Right in there where the input shaft is, that is our suspect seal. And hard to tell just by giving it a visible look, but it's the only thing really that makes sense that can transfer fluid, straight into the transfer case. So we're gonna go ahead and pop that out and replace it with a new one. Now we're faced with the task of getting the seal out. These can be kind of tricky. All the conventional seal pullers that I have don't really seem to, get in there on that housing to get a hold of that seal. So we're gonna try a couple things here. We're gonna try just going around the outside edge of it here with a screwdriver and tapping down on it, see if we can't just start to deform the lip so we can get a hold of something. So we'll see how this works. Let's get it to start to come loose here. Our main objective is to not scratch the shaft. We might put a few little boogers here up on the outside of the case, but if we can do it without scratching the input shaft there, that's more important than anything, really. So keep working this thing around, see if we can't get it to come out of there. I looked at the new seal that we have, and the way it's constructed, we can't use just a standard seal puller. So, keep doing this, and I'm going to keep working around this, just using this same method. Keep going around, keep twisting, keep working to get the thing to come out, and then we'll go from there. Man, this thing's really in there good. But this method seems to be working. Like I said, I got tons of seal pullers, but nothing really seemed to work good on that. So, well, there we go. Pretty boogered up, but we got it out. We didn't damage the input shaft here in the transfer case. Like I said, that's the most important thing there. So, if you employed that same method to remove that seal, it's highly likely you're going to encounter the same thing I did. Obviously I don't have the special Ford special service tool to remove that. Other methods of extractions, seal extractors that I had, I feared that it would damage the input shaft here, so I chose not to use those. So at any rate, using the screwdriver there, now these cases are magnesium or aluminum or whatever it is they make out of, so it put a few little light marks on the surface of it. It's really not that big a deal. You can leave a bunch of negative comments if you like, but it's not that big a deal. But if you did, we're going to want, at least on the inside edge here, you'll see the leading edge of this where the seal goes in. Originally has a slight taper to it to obviously help engage the seal there when you go to put that in. So I've got a few little tiny burrs in there that I really don't like the looks of, and I don't want it to hinder us putting the seal in. So I'm just going to wrap a rag in there. I'm going to use this little rotary file on the end of a drill. And I'm just going to go through lightly and clean up that edge. Just any spot where I want, and I'm talking just on the very outer lip there. You don't want to go way down in there. This is quite a wide sealing surface, so I'm not worried that it's not going to seal or that the seal's not going to hold correctly. If we knocked any of that aluminum down in and put a little sliver in there, a little burr, we want to make sure we get that off because we don't want it to hinder us when we go to put the new seal in. So I'm going to go around and do that just real lightly, pretty much just like I just did. I'm going to take a small piece of emery cloth and like these little tiny marks that were left on the outside just from torquing and wedging the screwdriver on there. I'm just going to take those off. You'll see it it left these little tiny indents, just from going around like that and working that seal up out of there. So like I say, I don't think it's I don't think it's that big a deal. You know, some people flip out about it, but you know, it's an old rusty truck. We're not gonna be on the road much longer, but not that that's an excuse or anything. But you know, we've gone this far, so let's do the best job we can and get that cleaned up. So when we put the new seal in, we make all our efforts, make the best effort we can, I guess, to do a good job and do it right. After you got that cleaned up, you go around it with your emery cloth, if that's what you chose to do. Stuff a rag back in there on that bearing. Before we go to put the seal in, we're going to clean up all this old gasket material here on the transfer case. I'm just going to take it out, tip it by the edge of the bench so it runs off the bench. I'm just going to use just a brass brush and some brake parts cleaner, and just start going around that, get all that old material off there. I want to do that before I put the seal in it. That way after we get the seal in, we don't have to worry about spraying it with any more chemicals or contaminating it in any way. We got everything cleaned up here. Got it all sprayed off. We fixed any little boogers we put on there. A couple things. You're going to want to look at the input shaft here, particularly where the seal rides. You're going to see a couple grooves on there where the seal was riding. If that is, if you scratched it getting the seal out, if it has actual, grooves cut right into it from the old seal, you can get these products here. They're called Speedi-Sleeves. It's a repair sleeve that you can actually stick over top of that shaft. I'm not going to open this up because we don't need it, and I don't want to send it back to NAPA after I've opened it, but these are available. Like I say, this one's made by SKF. I got this one down at NAPA. There's the number for you if you have the same Borg-Warner transfer case. But what that'll do is that'll basically put a new seal surface on that shaft for us. So keep that in mind. If something happens there, it's not completely catastrophic. These are rather expensive. These are probably in the $30 range, somewhere like that. So the other thing is too, when we go to put the seal in, I'd have to look on the specs there, but there probably is what Ford would consider a special service tool as far as installing the seal. I work on, thousands of different kinds of cars and trucks and stuff, so I don't have special service tools for every single thing we work on. So we've got the new seal. It's kind of a unique seal to what I would consider, it's kind of like two seals in one. We've got a lip seal here on the inside. We've also got a lip seal here on the outside. It's got springs on both of those seals, so it's going to keep fluid from coming in and keep fluid from coming out. So it's kind of a dual purpose. Typically, when I'm doing a job this big, something that's pretty intense like this, torque converter seal or something, usually I get OEM seals. This one was not available from Ford, so we had to go aftermarket. I got this one down in NAPA. There's the part number on that. I hope it works. Like I said, typically I would just get a factory seal. To put this in, you're going to want to get a piece of pipe, or a socket, something that's going to fit on the outside edge of the seal. You don't want to damage the lip or anything of that nature. So I've got I just got an axle nut socket. You can see when I put the seal on it, it fits just about perfect to hit on that outside edge. And of course it has to have enough depth to clear the input shaft here. So, keep that in mind too. Theoretically, we're going to stick it up on there like this, put our socket on it, and we're going to take and tap it in. Before we do that, it'd be a good idea to lubricate the inside of this seal. Being that this all runs in transmission fluid, I'm going to put a little transmission fluid on the input shaft here to help it slide on. Wipe this down with some training fluid. So I guess we can start that process. Just got a little thing of training fluid here. Just going to go ahead and lubricate the shaft. So just kind of help that seal slide up on there. The shaft has a taper to it, you'll see anyways. Put a little on my finger and just get a little inside this seal too. Just kind of help this along. So, some guys will use grease or assembly lube, but pretty much anything kind of ease this along. One thing we don't want to happen, we don't want the springs to fling off there. I guess another precautionary measure you can take, which is not absolutely necessary, we don't want it to leak on the not just through the rubber portion of the seal, but we don't want it to leak on the outside half of the seal here. So I've seen guys do it. I've done this myself, where we can take a really, really light film of silicone. We can just go around the outside edge of the seal, so as we drive it in, the silicone would fill in any imperfections that we've made, or any imperfections in the seal or inside the housing, and will seal the outside half of the seal also. So this is a pretty wide seal, not likely to have any problems, but we can take and go ahead and do that. I can kind of show you what that looks like. Let me grab some silicone here. So I'm just going to use some, got some Permatex Ultra Gray. So we'll just take, you don't need to gob this on there either, we'll just put it on real lightly, and then we'll run it around with our fingers. Probably should have done this before I lubed it, but you'll kind of see what I'm talking about here. A little bit in the outside edge of the seal. So just enough to kind of fill in any little voids we have there, stop any oil from, wicking up and around there. Alright, I think we got it. Alright, now that we have that done, we know our shaft is good, it's not scratched. I just wiped off the fluid we just put on there. So we'll rub a little bit more on there, and I won't do that again. Alright, so let's go ahead and put this seal in. Do this without making too big a mess. Stick it on there, you can feel that first lip kind of give it a little rotational wiggle. Feel that start on there. Use your sock or your pipe or whatever it is that you found or fashioned, or maybe you have a special tool. And as you're putting it in, make sure it's not going sideways or cocking off on you. You want to try to put it in as evenly as possible. And just being the way the socket's made, you'll see I rotate it a little bit hammered, rotate a little hammered, just to make sure that we're fully seated. And you can see, being that we did use a little silicone on it, I don't know if you can see it or not, but once it goes in, a little bit of that silicone will ooze out, just kind of around the lip there. So, yep, it's in, it's fully seated. Shaft turns nice and free. So. That's pretty much all there is to that. All right, one thing I can tell you, just from experience, if you can't get the factory seal, or it's not available, you can't find one, what I would do, or it's been my habit in the past, is I'll order a couple seals when I'm doing a job like this. I'll get a couple different brands, and usually two of the same brand. You can see on this one here, I actually bought 3 seals, just because you never know. We had to order them, all of them we had to wait to get. I had ordered myself a Speedi-Sleeve just because simply I didn't know what I was going to get into when I got in there. Not having a factory seal available, I wanted to have some choices, some options to see, which one looked the best. I mean, I can open up this national seal here, and you can tell it's only half as good of the quality as these SKF ones I got at NAPA. So I would encourage you to do that. And then the other nice thing about having at least 2 seals on hand is, if something goes wrong during this process, you end up boogering it up, it goes in sideways, you open the box, it's missing a spring. It's kind of a big job. You get your truck tore apart, you're going to need it to drive the next day or whatever. So it would be definitely a good idea to have, the second one sitting around as a spare. Just at least until you get the truck put back together. The seals are pretty cheap. You get done with the job, take it for a test drive it to the parts store, return your parts, get your money back. So kind of a little bit of a learn from my mistakes that I've made there in the past. So anyhow, hope that helps you. Our transfer case is all together. Everything's cleaned up on that. New seals in. Feel pretty good about the way that went. So what we got to do before we get too far here, we're going to clean up the mating half here on the extension housing, using the same methods. We're just going to get this gasket material off here. Going to make sure right up here on the dowel pin, we're going to make sure that's cleaned off, and I guess, yeah, make sure that your dowel pin is installed in your extension housing there. And then our torsion bars right here, the hexagonal end here, we're going to take and clean that up. That way when we go to stick our new key, or stick the keys back on there, they'll slide around. We'll smear a little never sees or grease or something on these to make that go a little easier. So we're going to get some things cleaned up and then flop the transfer case back up in here. So use that silicone that you have that we used that little bit there around the seal. You can either buy the new gasket for this, or you can just put a light layer of silicone around it. That's what I'm going to use, just some of that Permatex Ultra Gray. You don't need a ton of this stuff. This is a machined surface, so just a thin skim on here will do fine. So let's go ahead and spread it around. Make sure you got good even coverage, and that'll prevent any leaks between the training and the transfer case. So avoid packing it in your bolt holes or in this hole here where the dowel pin goes. So yeah, just make sure you got it spread around there, and it should be good. So move the camera here. I'm going to wipe off the training fluid leaking out of the transmission and attempt to put this back up in there. Yeah, see if we can't get it up in there before this thing starts dripping again. If it does drip out a little bit, no big deal. Usually it doesn't affect the silicone. I just like to try to go in clean and dry, but it can be a struggle to pick these things up sometimes. They're pretty heavy. I don't know how much they weigh, but I find a lot of times it's easier to just kind of pick them up out of there as opposed to screw around with a training jack and stuff, or it may be easier even laying on the ground using a floor jack. But see if we can't get this on the first shot. So that's in. You should probably have a bolt in your pocket. Once you get it up in, you kind of start a bolt there like we did. Take it out. That way it doesn't want to come down and catch you right in the teeth. That would hurt. Alright, I'm going to put the bolts back in the transfer case here, work my way back around them, get that tightened up, and we're just going to reverse the process. Should go pretty easy. Got the transfer case all up in there, it's bolted down. That all went pretty smooth. Plug the shift motor back in, hook the vent hose back up there on the front. My advice right now would be, being that we got this much room, let's go ahead and fill the transfer case up. So use your 3/8 square, take the fill plug out of it. And I looked it up on our program there. According to the information I have, it takes 2 quarts of regular Dextron Mercron training fluid, or regular Mercron training fluid. So my concern with this is, the transmission takes, Merc 5. This takes regular, regular old ATF. Just in case he's ever decide to mix again, I'm just going to fill it up with Valvoline Max Life. It covers the specs for both, Dextron and the Mercron 5. So we're just going to fill it up with that. It takes, like I say, it takes 2 quarts. So if you don't have any other means to fill these up, like we have, a couple of fluid, transfer devices that we can use to fill these. But boy, I tell you what, when this cross member is all the way up here, it's tight. It's kind of a pain to get in there. So I just put a spout here on the quart jug and just go ahead and squirt it up in there. So like I say, it's supposed to take 2 quarts, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing filled up till it runs out the hole, and then we'll finish putting it together. Alright, now that we've got the transfer case full, I assume you already cleaned up the ends on these torsion bars here like we talked about earlier. Let's go ahead and, because we're getting ready to slide this cross member back ahead, let's put some never sees on those. We're going to use a little bit of muscle grease. It's NIC's fortified spray grease basically, but we're just going to put a little light coating on those just in case we have to take this back apart, or make it easier for the next guy. So there as simple as that. You don't have to get too carried away with it. If that covered up any of your marks that you put on there, you go ahead and, you know, wipe that off so you can see your marks. So I'm gonna grab the torsion bar keys, and we're gonna start sliding this thing back together. Should go pretty quick. And I've got our keys. I got the one we labeled left. We got our indexing mark on there. I'm gonna go ahead and stick it up in the cross member here and start sliding this together. Started. Got our other one here we labeled right. Obviously, it's all we have left. Slide that up on there. Now that we got both of those up on there, that was pretty easy. We're going to take and this time we're going to bolt the cross member back down before we use the pipe wrench. I should have done that a little different, taking that apart. So, but you know, hindsight's always 20/20. So we're going to throw a couple bolts in this. Well, we got the cross member back in. That's pretty easy. Going to employ the same method we used to take those pieces out. We've got them labeled left and right. Like I said, they got the little notches in there. They barely lack anything from just just slipping through there. You only need to torque this thing just a little bit. So, like I say, we're going to stick the pipe wrench back on there. I don't have the tool that. They make a tool that clamps on here that has a forcing screw that goes up through, actually rotates that, but you know, use what you have. I've got my pipe wrench on there. Just gonna go ahead and squeeze up on that and then kind of assist it up a little bit with a bar here. Kind of get it up there to hold it. Slide that through and let it down. Go ahead and try to do the same thing on the other side here if it works. Try to get a good purchase on this thing. It's springs are pretty hard, so you really don't want to bite good on a pipe wrench. So definitely be careful if you're doing that. Whack just a little bit there up against my shield here on the drive shaft, so come down just a little bit, get better grip. Still don't quite have enough strength to do that, so give her one more shot here. There. Whew. So it does take quite a fair amount of pushing there to get that. So, you know, You might be able to pick one of those tools up, you know, on Amazon or something that pushes up on those if you don't want to use that method there with the, or you know, you might be able to, you know, fashion a, you know, 2-jaw puller on there, you know, a forcing screw. You know, if we couldn't get it with that, I'd tried something different. So, but that method seemed to work for us. We're going to reinstall our bolts here. I didn't mention it earlier, but these should have been labeled also. You know, and the only reason I say that, because dimensionally they should be the same, but we're basically setting this back to, you know, thousandths of an inch. You know, depends on how you took your measurement, but you know, whatever we measured from, we want to make sure that it's exactly the same as it was. So, you know, this is what we measured from. You know, the head thickness on these could be different. You know, will it make a difference if you mix them up? Probably not. So we'll just spray these with a little never sees. We're going to start these back up in there. So get them up in, and we'll get them close. You can see the, you know, pretty much the rust mark that was on them from when we took it apart. So you'll be able to get them pretty close anyways, and just measure them and fine tune them a little. I just want to look up in there and make sure they index the little dimple they go into. We're pretty much right up to the rust spot from before. Seems to start okay. Started okay. Looks like our pieces are all locked in, so everything looks good there. So like I say, we're going to grab the calipers. We're going to take our measurements again from what we wrote down originally, and then just use you know, a ratchet and adjust these as close to or exactly where they were, and that should ensure our front end is just about like it was. But you know, with this vehicle, just because we have access to it, we're going to take and check the wheel alignment. We're going to measure the ride height, make sure everything's good, yeah, gosh, can't talk. Going to do any adjustments that we have to correct any problems. Torsion bars all put up in there. I got them all measured up, put back within, I don't know, within 10 thousandths of where they were. So we should be really close enough to get it lined up anyhow. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and put the drive shafts in. But I want to show you something here before we get, you know, started on that too far. You can notice here on that rear flange on the axle, I think it's pretty darn rusty. So we don't want to just take our drive shaft and you know, just flop it up on there. So we're going to take and clean all that rust off there first. Alright, now that we've got that cleaned off, it would only make sense to do the same thing on the you know, the other mating half of this that's on the drive shaft. So we're going to clean the other flange on the drive shaft. We're going to do the very same thing to the transfer case and the front axle. If you're watching this video before you take it apart, do it on the transfer case before you do what I did, put the transfer case back in. So you know, fortunately for us, you know, we'll be able to reach up in there with this you know, little gasket cleaner and a little 36 grit sanding disc, and you know, be able to make some pretty short work of that. But you know, if you're using you know, any other method to clean that off, then it could be a little aggravating. Though you already got a transfer case in. At any rate, you'll look on there and you'll see the ghost marks of where the drive shaft sat originally. Even though we've cleaned all the rust off this, we're just going to go ahead and just stick that back on where it was. That's the cleanest part of the flange here. So you can see it's got bolt holes all the way around it. You know, all of them will work. But these ones that we already previously took out, they don't have any rust in those holes, so it'll just make the whole process easier. But and the purpose of cleaning the rust off is, you know, it's going to prevent that drive shaft flange from sitting in there cockeyed or getting a piece of rust cocked under it and causing some driveline vibrations. A lot of people go nuts. They're like, oh, you've got to mark this, and you know, see, because if you don't put it on the exact way that it was, it's going to vibrate. Well, the fact of the matter is, when they balance these at the factory, the drive shaft is balanced independent of the vehicle, so its correlation to this rear flange is, you know, that's kind of redundant because it wasn't balanced as an assembly. You know, drive shafts and differentials aren't balanced together. You know, the drive shaft is balanced independent. So I think that's kind of an old, you know, an old rumor, an old myth. You know, everybody's like, you know, don't pull a drive shaft unless you mark it. You know what? Big deal. You know, the big thing is to make sure that the flange is clean so it doesn't vibrate. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. You can agree or disagree, but you know, I've taken a lot of them out. I've never had them come back with issues of vibration. I would agree, for example, if you were changing the rear U-joint and you took the rear yoke and the drive shaft and you rotated those 180 degrees off, yeah, you know, at that point it may or may not vibrate, but those two pieces were balanced as an assembly, not the rear differential and the drive shaft. So it's kind of something to think about. All our flanges cleaned. I took and sprayed a little Never Seez on this flange here on this rear drive shaft. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in there. Make sure on the end that goes into the transfer case, on the slip yoke there, make sure you wipe off any dirt or dust or grass or wood chips, gravel, dog turds, you know, anything you might have gotten on that while the drive shaft is laying on there, because you definitely don't want to damage that seal. Get it centered up on the male half of the splines there and just slip it in. Like I say, where it bolts up to the rear, you know, make sure you paid attention as to which way this was oriented. Even though you cleaned it off, this will just save you from having to clean out all the other bolt holes there. So we'll go ahead and get these started in there. Tighten that down. Truck should still be in neutral at this point, so I'll just rotate this right around and get the rest of those bolts in there. No problem. So all in all, I think the job went pretty well. Seemed pretty easy to do. Maybe a little more difficult, you know, if you're laying down trying to, you know, wrestle that out. But I've helped some friends do some transfer cases, you know, and stuff at their house. And you know, a lot of times I think it's a little bit easier laying down because you can just kind of set it down and, you know, rest it on your chest. And then, you know, if you're on a creeper, just have somebody grab your feet and pull you out. So I'm just going to give you something to think about, or use a floor jack or something. Swivel sockets will get you. Let's go around those. It's the only swivel 12-point socket I own. It's just a little snap-on 12 millimeter, little stubby one. Ford used these on their drive shafts. It seems like forever, so just one of the things I've got acquired and just kind of keep around for jobs like this. So now we're going to go ahead and jump up here to the front and essentially do the same thing. So we'll go up there. Use our extension to get these tight. Again, on that flange, we took and cleaned it up, oriented the drive shaft the exact same way that it was, and then you know, put the bolts in. So, and we're going to do the same thing here up on the front axle. So, got that bolt started already. Sack it back. So anyhow, simple as that. Taking a little extra time to clean those flanges off, putting a little Never Seez on them. Definitely makes it easier the next time you got to take a U-joint, or you got to take the drive shaft out. You know, change a U-joint, or you know, if we screwed this job up, we got to do it again, or you got to put a tranny in it, put a gas tank in it. You know, so you know, it's quite often that the drive shafts have to come out of these. You know, if you keep it any amount of time, you do any amount of work on it. So A little bit of time here definitely saves some time down the road. Well, that pretty much is that. So you can see what kind of process you'll get into if you have that issue where your transmission is dumping all the fluid back into the transfer case. So hopefully that gets this guy all fixed up, gets him back on the road. Got looking at that old seal we took out. It's pretty evident on the seal lip there. There's little grooves cut into those seal lips that are the opposite from the rotation that it spins to kind of keep any fluid that's migrating out. Kind of works kind of like a screw, you know, keeps the fluid in. So anyhow, maybe some more on that at a later date, but you could see that the evidence of all that was gone, you know, so the seal lip was definitely starting to wear, and I believe that's what was causing the fluid exchange. There's really nothing else there that can do that I'm aware of. So if there is and I missed something, I definitely would like to hear your thoughts on that, or if your experience, if you ran into some other things, you know, there that, you know, had repetitive failures on these. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we need a dipstick. So I picked one of these up down at the Ford garage. There's our part number on that, in case you need one of them. This one you'll see when we take it out, it's all rusted on the bottom. It's pretty much rotted right up the whole side of it, so it's causing the fluid to leak out. Must be when he was filling it up there. It made some of those holes kind of obvious, or a little more obvious anyways. So I did look at that. I think it bolts right to the right side cylinder head, so I think theoretically we should be able to unbolt it, give it a little wiggle, and that should come up and out. It's got a O-ring that holds it down inside the transmission, or seals it inside the transmission rather, so hopefully that comes out pretty easily. I just took and pulled little push nails that hold this rubber flap on, so we'll stuff that back out of the way. Good idea kind of how a little bit of rust on this thing, but that right there, let me see if I can get zoomed in on this, that is the bolt that holds the dipstick on, so you can see the joys of working here in New York. It looks like our next YouTube special was probably going to be how to replace a manifold on a 4.6, because it does not look like it doesn't look like this exhaust manifold's long for the world here. So it's not leaking now, but I've done dozens of those things, and I'll tell you right now, it ain't gonna be long, and it will be. So hard to believe that this truck only has about 50,000 miles on it. Not a lot of miles for the amount of rust, but so we're gonna go ahead and take that bolt right there out, what's left of it. So probably have to stuff a twist socket on there, so I'll show you how we're going to do that. That bolt originally would have took an 8mm socket. We've got it whittled down to a 6.25mm twist socket. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can reach in there, just push this against the head, snap it loose, take out what's left of it. We'll put a new one in. So let's see what we can do here. It's kind of got to hold in on them. Let them get a bite. There. That wasn't that bad, actually. There it is. That's all that's left to the head of that. Really not much left to it. So, you know, the bolt itself, its threads are in good condition, but the, you know, the head of it here that's been exposed, that thing's toast. But kind of get the idea how you can take a fastener like that that's, you know, completely trashed. You can hook onto it with one of these twist sockets. And the theory behind it, these are, you know, the harder you pull, you know, the harder they grip. So, you know, just kind of once you get one to fit and take a bite, you know, you just keep turning and it just keeps driving itself up on there. So. Kind of a neat thing to get throw in your toolbox. And that we're right here. We just took that bolt out. It's pretty obvious that the dipstick tube's pretty loose now. So I went in and threw a bucket underneath there, and it's going to take and kind of wiggle this thing back and forth. Oh yeah, it's spilling out pretty fair amount of fluid. So I guess it was a good decision to throw that bucket under there. So all right, well, might actually. Fit right out through here. Now we'll probably have to, probably the best bet. You know, we've got these. We can, I don't know, flick it for. I don't know if we can do the whole job from here or not. Sure, fender in there. I do it this way if you got the car jacked up still, or you just go up under the hood and pull it out. Probably either way. So take our actual tube out, or our indicator. Gives you an idea what that tube looked like. So I think it's definitely rusted. It was really wet down here towards the bottom. So, but you can see this thing was pretty crusty compared to the new one. So I'm gonna get the new one. We're just gonna feed it back up in there, pretty much like we took this one out, and go down, line it up in transmission, put it in. Well, we've got the new one fed up in there. Just make sure you'll see when you're putting it in. Keep it on the inside of the oxygen sensor, and then you'll see a tin shield around this catalytic converter. Make sure it runs towards the transmission behind that tin shield. I would say just kind of leave it laying there lightly. We're going to go underneath, we're going to guide it into the transmission, and then come back out and put a new bolt in that. Got that lined up. Popped in there nice. All right, well, we went ahead and got our new bolt. It's a 6mm. Oops. Drop my wrench there. Yeah, I'll scrap it. It was a, like I said, 6mm by 1.0 by 20. New one will probably take a 10mm wrench, but that should line up pretty easy for you. If that tang on the dipstick on the new tube doesn't line up easily on the head, double check to make sure that you've got it inserted in the transmission all the way. Sometimes the O-rings can be kind of a pisser to get down in there all the way. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set it down, warm it up, check the fluid. Well, so there you go, viewers. That's how to do that job here. Pull the transfer case out, replace the seal, put it back together. So it's a little bit of a task. Hopefully this will help you in doing yours, or making a decision whether or not you want to do it, or have somebody else do it, or have it done in a shop, or wherever the case may be. So there may be some other struggles that you might have. Like I say, if you've got it up on jack stands, or you just got the front of it blocked up, or wherever the case may be, there might be some other struggles that weren't present here, simply because we had it up in the air higher. So kind of give that some thought, some consideration before you go to tackle this yourself. Plus, if you're dealing with heavy amounts of rust, definitely going to need a torch, or some source of heat there. So keep that in mind too. But again, I just hope this video was helpful, helping you make a decision either way, giving you some tips and tricks along the way. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. Make sure you go like us on Facebook, subscribe to our channel here, and favorite this video. So thanks for watching.